Dragons are spiritual beings that appear quite frequently in the Legend of Zelda series. These powerful entities are usually depicted as guardians of the light, or they can be neutral, or choose the evil side of Ganon and his minions. There are many versions of these dragons that we can go over in this video. However, there is something interesting to talk about that might explain some of these entities we see in the series. So to start with the video, we go and visit Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom first. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, you know what to do for the upcoming videos and theories. Long ago in the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom timeline, there was once the Zonai that lived together with the Hylians. They built all kinds of structures across the continent and united their culture with the Hylians under one banner. But this culture brought secrets with them, secret stones that gave the owner mystical powers that grew inside of them. That power was usually depicted in different ways, like the life force, or even their motives and emotions, and gave them their own separate colors too. An evil doer would become demonic with the intent of doing harm, and a Lightbringer would get the powers that matches their personality, their tribe that they came from, or even the elements. However, there was also a secret ritual that got banned and was never talked about again until many years later, when it was brought up by Mineru. Mineru, the Zonai Sage of Spirit, explained that long ago secret stones were used in rituals and it was forbidden to commit to them. These rituals, however, were not always banned in Zonai culture. It was used many years ago by many committed and important characters throughout history that have long been forgotten. We can see some of their bones and bodies still linger under the depths as most likely a punishment to these actions, as it was forbidden to do so. These bones are enormous, similar to the body mass of demon dragon Ganondorf. When the Hylians discovered energy from the weather in the early days when the Zonai disappeared long ago, like electricity for example, which we can find in the Zonai runes, some of the Hylians sacrificed themselves in order to become the next immortal dragon to turn into the protector of that specific region. This energy was first recovered by the Zonai chargers, which are depicted in the mural of the tomb within the Zonai runes, and it was a sacrifice to the holy dragon Farosh. The Zonai ruins are known to be the very oldest and ancient ritualistic area that the Zonai had built after their arrival. The giant dragon in front of the Spring of Courage was not dedicated to Farosh, however, as the dragon doesn't even have any horns on its head. It is in fact far older. This giant settlement where the Zonai once roamed for the first time in this world was in fact dedicated to a total different entity that you now know as the ancient hero aspect, that was once part of the Zonai tribe. This was the Spirit of Courage that battled against the Calamity Ganon for the first time 10,000 years ago. Farosh, however, was a dragon that came to be after one of the Hylians decided it was time to become a dedicated protector, and so they swallowed one of these stones to become one of the three dragons we see today. The reasoning of this happening is that these dragons aren't real entities and not everyone can see them in Hyrule. Sometimes people don't even realize that they are there. As the Zonai were the closest to the goddesses when they descended from the heavens, they brought these sacred stones only for particular important events. The rest of these stones were hidden behind the Forgotten Temple until Roru found them many years later. After the first battle of Calamity Ganon, the legendary hero of old passed on, but before he did, he shared his own secret stone of courage and kept his life force aura hidden within an armor set. This aura is the life force of the hero that never reincarnated or shed his soul into a different being, like what happened with Ganondorf. Instead, the green spiritual stone of courage was kept inside the head of this aspect armor. This aspect is so old that not even Roru knew about it. Now, I think that once upon a time, when the help of courage was needed, a Zonai dragon took the form of an Hylian in order to communicate with the early Hylians that came before. It explains the bestial part of this character. The early tribes of the Hylians, with one of them wearing a barbaric armor set, were once responsible for many battles within the continent that became Hyrule over time. But these tribes had to come together, to unite them all under one banner and bring them civilization. The armor set of these barbarians still reflect heavily back onto the hero aspect, as both of the armor sets have a common theme, that being painted with ritualistic war paint, giving the wearer strength and they both are red colored with bestial traits. These people lived in the jungles of the Farron region, where they worshipped the divine aspect. But when the world finally became more civilized by the help of the Zonai tribe, a new presence rose up from the ground. This creature by the name of Ganon appeared and brought chaos and destruction. It was during this time that the Hylians had to be united with the rest of the tribes and fought together with the Zonai to drive this menace back. It caused a large snowball effect when an alliance between all the peoples was made, and could be one of the many reasons why these barbarians suddenly disappeared without a trace. They fused together to create a new identity, called Hylian, and what kick-started Hylian civilization. The ritualistic armor sets we can find throughout the world were once used in these ancient rituals to praise the three dragons when the Zonai rescued the Hylians from being destroyed. But after the disappearance of all the Zonai members, their entire culture disappeared with it. It explains why in the present time of Hyrule that nobody seems to ritualistically worship the dragons anymore, like they used to do. Because all the ones with the power to see them, with pure hearts and being the closest to the goddesses, have disappeared other than a handful of people that still have a much bigger life force than other people do. Zelda, Link, the King. Only important figures or children can still see them. By the way, within this same battle, there was another tribe that kept secrets. They developed many machines out of the last remaining Zonai technology, and they were the first to grow out of their barbaric nature. This tribe was called the Sheikah tribe. Some refer to them as the Shadow tribe. Hiding in the shadows they did, as nobody trusted these characters that use energy and magic. And when the Zonai disappeared and all hope seemed lost, they created the four divine beasts in order to help the other tribes of the world to defeat Calamity Ganon. The Sheikah weren't trusted that much as they used to be. The Shadow Folk protected many things, including a sacred power that has lost in time. But this sacred power was growing within a young lady by the name of Princess Zelda, the first Zelda to have been born in the royal family, and the one we see in the tapestry. She is the ancestor of the present Zelda we see in Breath of the Wild, and her ancestor was Queen Sonia. The power that she holds was the Sealing Power, or Light Force if you will. Only this was able to withstand Calamity Ganon. Together with an ancient sword given to the hero by goddess Hylia herself, the Master Sword, they befell the ancient curse that was the monster. Now, I found some interesting bits that I would like to talk about as well. Dragons are depicted in Japanese and Chinese mythology as strong independent creatures that usually serve a higher purpose that mortals do not understand, but they can also symbolize something like rebirth or change. In a game called Hyrule Warriors, which is non-canon to the series, we have a character called Volga, which can turn into a dragon, but this inspiration was designed as the dragon boss monster from the Fire Temple in Ocarina of Time called Volvagia, and this monster was once slain by a legendary hero of the Gorons, only to be resurrected years later by Ganondorf. And there we have it again, that this dragon supposedly guarded the temple against anyone trying to steal the Fire Medallion. So is it possible that within the Zelda series, that many dragons used to be Hylian and transformed into mythological creatures? Or that these monsters were once normal beings, but transformed later after finding a new power? In Buddhism, this is a common theme that occurs quite frequently, and there are also many other creatures we can go over. In Oracle of Seasons, we have the antagonist of the game called Unox.
Kijk eens, voor jou.
Geef ook iets extra's met de nieuwe Unox rijk gevulde tomatensoep.
Sorry, I mean Onox. Onox has a different name in Japanese, by the way, called Gorgon, which is a Greek mythological creature like Medusa, so he's named after a monster. Onox, however, when you look at his design, that he wears two eyes on his armor. Eyes that look very similar to the Majora's Mask, but I'll go over that later. Onox, however, has also a secret hiding within him, as he's not like he appears to be. In fact, he's an evil dragon that was summoned from an unknown dark realm. In his dialogue, he says that he came from the Dark Realm, but I think that must be some kind of mistranslation, as I tried to research what he actually meant with that, and it seems that he meant the Dark World. However, if I remember correctly, the Dark World did not exist after Link's awakening, as Ganon was already defeated in A Link to the Past, so it must be a different spiritual realm. I hope you guys in the comments can help me out with that part, because I don't know what that exactly means. To go back to Onox and his design, we have Majora's Mask, that was once used in hexing rituals. The dark energy that focused upon this mask created the twisted monster within the mask. This energy, however, could be traced to gloom and malice that are known to recreate other monsters like the Gleeoks in Tears of the Kingdom. Malice is a very powerful emotional energy, a misinformed type of energy that allows an evil sorcerer to bend it to its will like Ganondorf used to do. Within the manga of Majora's Mask, which is non-canon, we see that Majora was once a dragon, but was slain, and his rib was carved into a mask. Another ritualistic idea of transforming something into a different form. I think you start to see the patterns now, that things change into something else, to replace the evil for something good. There's a possibility to me that Nintendo has decided to use a lot of Japanese mythology in their games, with some depictions coming from religions and other mythology with their own interpretations. The Nagas, reptilians or half-serpents, have appeared in the series and are an example of that. I already showed some of these depictions in my other videos that you can see here. But we also have the reincarnation theme in the games, where monsters and entities transform into energy. When Zelda in Tears of the Kingdom decided to transform into the Light Dragon, she chose to sacrifice herself by casting away her ego as Hylian form and reincarnate into a divine being. This is something that is known in Buddhism as reaching nirvana, to cast away your own ego and build character within yourself. In Skyward Sword we have the Buddha sitting in front of a river, and within the lore is a giant tank to purify and clean the water that is tainted by demonic gloom and malice coming from below. The three goddesses can be depicted as the three sacred treasures, which are the Kusanagi sword, which is the master sword, the Kagami mirror, which is about wisdom and reflecting upon yourself, and the Makatama, which is not a coincidence to be just looking exactly the same as a secret stone. The shrines in Tears of the Kingdom, created to keep the shadows at bay, coming from the depths below, it is all connected. The ritual of Draconification is no exception to that. So to close off this video, what do you think about my theory of what the inspiration is behind the rituals or the history behind it? What do you think about the fossils found down under the depths, and are they connected to the three dragons and the underworld? I still have plenty of other theories to discuss and talk about, but those will be in the next video. If you haven't subscribed yet, you know what to do if you like my content, and thank you guys for watching.